Okay, and now I'll give you. Yes, sir. Let's go ahead.
I'm the host again. Okay. How will you be able to record?
Yeah, I've already started the recording.
Okay, great. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's start. Okay, the first, the entire objective today is going to be to help you figure out how do you actually present metrics and why do you present metrics about your organization, first to yourself and then to the outside world. I think that's the critical part. My experience is that most startups focus on metrics because that's what the funders have told them, that what are your metrics, what's your growth rate, what's your churn rate, what's your CAC, and they get to this sense that, you know, unless we have these metrics in place, we will not get funded. I think your focus has to change. Your focus has to be that if we are not measuring how our business is performing, your business is going to fail. Because if your business is succeeding, the fund investor will see that. So that is the focus that we are going to bring into the presentation. We'll get into specifics also. What will you do? What do you do in sales funnel? How do you measure sales funnel? We'll do all that. But first part of the workshop is really going to focus on what should be the structure of your entire metrics activity. How do you really look at numbers and why do you look at numbers? Okay, going ahead. For those who actually haven't attended our workshops earlier, we want to briefly share with you what is our philosophy. Why do we do what we do? Because our first guidance to any startup is that you have to have a very clear purpose, personal purpose and a business purpose for whatever you're doing. So I'm going to share our business purpose with you. Our purpose comes from the fact that entrepreneurs in India can start business, but find it very difficult to grow business. This is my experience across the SME sector, with whom I've been working since 2013, and startups with whom I've been working since 2013 again. What we've seen is the Indian entrepreneurship ecosystem. We actually formally launched VICE in September 2018 when Anupma and Sudip joined the team. And before that, I was really driving this with myself and with a company called Unnati Unlimited out of Ahmedabad. The starting up set of premises that we had is that culturally, Indian youths are encouraged to seek jobs rather than entrepreneurship. Consequently, they are not trained or coached to be an entrepreneur. They would rather do something than, you know, think, plan, and execute. Consequently, their ability to think through things, problem solve, is not developed with an entrepreneur mindset. They've been taught all their life to be realistic rather than to be in touch with their emotions and follow their passion. Consequently, they would not risk all for following their dreams. What is the Western and entrepreneurship ecosystem like? I mean, how come we see so many interesting, those of you who've seen the Shark Tank program, you'll see, you know, bakers, plumbers, firemen coming up with business ideas. And some of them get funded. These are not people from some high pedigree colleges or universities. These are people from ordinary walks of life. So what is it in the Western entrepreneurship ecosystem that's different? First of all, youth are encouraged to be entrepreneurs from their childhood if they show inclination and initiative. My most interesting story is about a gentleman called Bill Gross, who's a very successful entrepreneur and an investor in regular stock markets and investor in startups. He started his entrepreneurship journey, started at the age of 12, when he approached his father with an idea that he's going to open a candy stand next to the neighborhood bus stop. His father took out $100 and gave it to him and said, yes, here's your money to start with, and I will want 25% of your profit. What really that father did was he did two things. He communicated to his child that it is great to be an entrepreneur and I will give you money for it. And if I'm giving you money, money has value, I will want share of profit. Excuse me. The other thing that we see in the Western entrepreneurship ecosystem, that liberal use of thought frameworks, business models, business tools, and coaching, which is what we as an organization also do. We make a liberal use. Why do we do this? Because we know that in absence of this ability of entrepreneurs to think through their business issues and business complexities is going to be very challenging. The other thing we see in the Western entrepreneurship system is that people have a very high degree of customer centricity and value creation. My experience with Indian entrepreneurs is when we say, how will you create value for your customer? We get a blank look. Because he has not thought about it from customer's perspective. He has always thought about it from his perspective. What will he do to create the company? The other thing which we see is they have highly evolved communication skill and marketing capability. We see a very big lack of this in Indian entrepreneurs. A very large percentage of Indian entrepreneurs are coming from technical background. So their ability to communicate, their marketing capabilities have not been developed. You're not taught these things from day one in your school, in your college, whereas an American kid learns this very, very early in life. So what is our problem statement? In order for the Indian startup entrepreneur to be successful, he needs to be coached using a combination of thought and business frameworks to help him strategize and then create, execute, review, and refine his operations plan in a structured manner that covers his complete journey from the time he gets an idea till he has created a growing company. This is what Bulletproof Your Startup does. It helps startups strategize, leveraging business frameworks, thought frameworks, business tools, and then helping him create operations plan and monitor that plan and review and refine that plan with him so that he makes a successful company. How do we do this? The basic framework, the overarching framework that we use is the 5 chasms framework, idea to execution. And we've created this 5 chasms journey business evolution framework that actually leverages well-established international as well as proprietary business frameworks to help entrepreneur convert his idea into a successful company. And these are distinct 6 stages that your company goes through. Figuring out whether an idea is an opportunity, figure out which idea will be really an opportunity, then do customer development. Once customer development succeeds, extend your product to achieve product go-to-market fit. And once you succeed there, then discover your business model and start scaling. And once you discover your business model, then create your main go-to-market strategy. And finally, hire an executive team and grow and scale your organization. Clear 6 distinct stages. Startups fail at any one of these 6 stages because they haven't thought it through, they haven't planned, they haven't strategized, they run out of money. Okay, moving on. We have separate workshops for actually deep diving into each of these stages and what frameworks are relevant at this stage, at a specific stage. We will not be doing that in this workshop. So some of you who may not be familiar with the frameworks that we will talk about, should attend one of our workshops or go to YouTube and attend one of the recordings of that workshop. So we have 4 different ways of helping entrepreneurs. We do these kind of workshops. Close to 3,000 entrepreneurs have attended our workshops over the last 3 years. Those who need more support can opt for what we call one-on-one coach insight, where we actually pick up a specific issue that is troubling the entrepreneur and work with him through thinking through the problem analysis part, helping him structure a solution for that problem, and then also giving him steps forward that he should take to execute. This engagement lasts about 2 to 4 weeks, and our team actually works with you to help you think through and design the solution. You will see examples of this coach insight through this webinar when we ask for specific issues from you. A more deeper engagement that we do is what we call strategy design. So you are stuck at some critical, one of these 6 stages, and you want to design your strategy for that stage. This is something we've just launched a month ago, and I think 2 months ago, and where we actually work with you over a couple of months and deep dive into whatever your stage is, what your data is telling, what are your business goals, and start focusing on creating a short-term strategy for you, which will take you past that stage. And finally, we do end-to-end deep coaching, which is at whatever stage you might be, you've not reached your VC funding stage, we work with you like your executive team. We don't get into detailed execution, but we help create the strategy. We monitor your operations plan. We review and refine your operations plan every fortnight with you, spending time with you, and keep bringing in whatever alterations, changes are required in consultation with you till you actually become a company. In the process, whatever support you need in terms of bringing investments to look at your proposition, or bringing in other partners whose services you need, we help you there. Quickly, team, myself, 42 plus years of experience, IIT Kanpur, have been a serial entrepreneur. Last 6 years spent in supporting SMEs and startups. Anupma Singh, 17 plus years of experience, 9 plus years of entrepreneurial experience, has successfully launched 2 startups and has exited 1. So they have 18 plus years of high-tech experience, 8 plus years in 3 startups, successfully exited 2. Other facilitators and domain experts we pull in for specific involvement in a specific project. What will we cover today? Very quickly. How do you define goals and objectives at different stages of your journey? Avikalp mentioned a framework called OKR, that's spelled O for orange, K for no.
Karnataka.
Karnataka. It's so funny. K is silent in so many words. And R for results. So K for KPIs actually. And that's a very easy framework to use. I would suggest read up about it, approach Avikalp later in terms of how he has used it, and see how you can implement it for yourself. Within Bulletproof Your Startup, we fundamentally base all our strategic structures around balanced scorecard framework, which has been very successfully used by large companies. We have simplified it for startups. How do you identify key result areas at different stages? What are KPIs, data metrics, and analytics? This is a regular business framework conversation. So this conversation today will not be just about metrics. It will be about how do you actually measure the performance of your organization at different stages? Because from day one, it is it's a business organization. Its future may be uncertain, but it's a business organization. How would you do market research at an early stage? What's a marketing funnel? What's a sales funnel? What are sales metrics? How investors measure startup growth? What do they look for? So these conversations will keep happening throughout the presentation. And I may not have a specific slide for some of these topics, but we will be picking up that topic for conversation. Very interesting warning, statutory warning for all of you. This is a very famous, he's no longer alive, Herbert Simon. He was a political scientist and a cognitive psychologist. His primary research was in the area of decision making within organizations. He introduced a brilliant term, satisficing, which meant satisfactory and sufficient. And why did he do this? His basic belief was that what information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients. Hence, a wealth of information creates poverty of attention. This is the problem today with internet. There is so much content out there that your ability to focus becomes extremely difficult. So my first guidance to you is whatever you measure should not be exhaustive and extensive. It should be satisficing. It should be satisfactory and sufficient to prove a point. So please be very careful with what all you measure and what all you track. And what you measure and track at different stages of business will change. So how do you define a startup? Give me a minute. Just so that we set the context in place. What are you really involved in and what are you supposed to be doing? So as per Government of India, you should not be older than 5 years and your turnover should not be more than 25 crores in the last 5 financial years. But here is the crux. You have to be innovating, developing, deploying, and commercializing new products, processes, or services. If you're not doing this, you are not a startup. You are a regular business. And this innovation would be driven by technology or intellectual property. If you're not innovating, developing, deploying, commercializing new product, process, or service, then you should be opening new geographies or new customer segments. Even then, it's a startup. Example, Amazon started selling books online in US, Flipkart did it in India. They changed the geography. Flipkart started doing e-commerce in India, in metros and tier 1 cities. Meesho started doing it in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Meesho is a startup, even though it's doing exact same thing as Flipkart. Moving on. Let's take a broader definition of what's a startup. This is Government of India definition. But it is fundamentally a business. You should not forget it at any stage. You should measure it like a business, but with an uncertain future. Why an uncertain future? Because you're trying to address a problem a customer is facing. Where is he facing the problem? In a job he's attempting to perform or wants to perform. The job is fundamental. Anything a customer buys or procures, he buys or procures it to perform some job. And you are doing this in a manner no one has addressed earlier. This is where the innovation is coming in. Without this, you're not a startup. And because no one has done it earlier, you have a set of hypotheses about how to address that problem. And you are now setting out to prove those hypotheses. So if problems are addressed successfully within a defined business model, you need to discover a business model. Then it should have the possibility of generating humongous future profits if you want VC investment. If you don't want VC investment, then, and you don't want that humongous growth, you want to just build a sustainable organization which is growing, which is profitable, then generating humongous profits is not necessary. You just need to be reasonably profitable. And if humongous profits happen without VC funding, so be it, you're in a great business. So please remember this context, it is extremely important. Now let's look at how does your journey start? Because this is where most entrepreneurs make a big mistake. So you have an idea about a product or service that you think would be great to create. Again, that same culture of do is setting in, what you have learned all your life. So take an example here. Imagine that you just passed your 11th class, you're now going to go to 12th class. Or you just passed your 12th class and you're getting ready for giving all these admission entrance tests for some good colleges. And you get an idea, you get a brainwave in your summer holidays saying, you know, why not start a small business and make some pocket money or something that I can pay fees with. And you go to your dad, your mom, and you say, you know, I want to start in Bangalore, let's say you want to start an idli stand outside in your colony. And you have so many of these carts which actually are attached to a small tempo and people actually sell food. And you'll be surprised how much money some of them make. There are at least 4 such stalls outside Gopalan Mall on Bannerghatta Road. So I did talk to one of them. And finally, after a lot of persuasion, the person told me that he would take neat 5,000 rupees a day home. That meant he was making 1.5 lakhs a month. Somebody who probably would not have got a job as a helper or a driver or whatever. One of them was actually a graduate. So very interesting. So the whole idea about, you wanting to start a business. So suppose you told your dad in 12th class, I'm getting a job, which is going to pay me 1.5 lakhs a month. Your dad would have said, great, go for it. And then if you had told him, it means setting up a cart outside my house, he would have said, are you nuts? Because in our culture, the focus is on getting a job and not on being an entrepreneur. So this is how people start. They want to do something. But there's a big challenge in that. And let's understand that challenge. Okay, you have an idea. What will ensure success? How do you know that you will be successful? How do you know that you will continue doing it through all the hardships, through all the difficulties? So what will you need to know? Whatever you're going to do, does the world need it? Are there enough customers out there who will actually take your product or your service? Because without this, you don't have a business. The next question you have to ask yourself is, what do you really love doing? Maybe you are a naturalist and you actually love wildlife photography and you are now wanting to set up some marketplace, or you want to set up a hyper-local delivery. The question you have to ask is this what you really love doing? Because without that, you're able to last through what the hardships is going to be very, very challenging. Okay, even if you don't love it, then you'll have to ask, okay, what are you good at? Maybe you already have experience of setting up marketplaces, you're good at it. Then the question you have to ask is, what will you get paid for? Will you get paid for it? Will you make money? Without these 4 questions, you don't have a business. This is a fantastic framework. It's known as Ikigai, I-K-I-G-A-I, developed by Japanese, I forget who, but fantastic framework. I did not show you the framework first, but I wanted to show you the questions you'll have to ask in your business, because people tend to kind of shut their ears and mind when we say the word framework. But see it from questions perspective. And all these 4 things together drive your business purpose and your purpose. Why is it important for you to know this? Let's try to examine that. Amazing guy, Aristotle, centuries back, the gentleman said, where the needs of the world, what's your purpose? Where the needs of the world and your talents cross, there lies your vocation. So the question is, if these are the 4 questions, then what is the data you will need to decide that whether you have a valid business proposition? Who is the customer? You'll have to ask that question before you even spend a single penny building a solution. What is he trying to do? What problem does he have in whatever he's trying to do? Will you solve it differently? So I just want to kind of give you some context here. These questions that I have brought out here are from our Jobs to be Done framework. And without asking these questions, you will not know whether you will get traction or not. Will you solve it differently is about innovation. What is it that you will do differently that will attract your customers? And doing differently is not enough. Will it be better for the customer? Will it reduce his pains? Will it increase his gains? Will be next set of questions you'll have to ask. So what are the pains and gains in your solution? If the pains are more and gains are same, he's not going to go for it. So you have to have an answer that, okay, the pains will be reduced, and you should have a way of quantifying those pains. Why is it important to know this, and how will you do it? Actually, when you start, let me wait till customer dev, and then I'll tell you how you will measure this and find out. The next question you have to ask, which the answer is going to be very difficult. How large is the market? And along with that, you'll have to ask is, okay, world market could be very large, but what is the size of your addressable market? What is the size of the market you will address in your early stages? So without these questions, you do not know whether there is a need, there is a sufficient size of customers that you can reach out to who will take your product. Unless you've answered these 6 questions, you shouldn't spend a penny of your money, hard-earned money. So how do you do this? You do market research, you do online surveys, you do customer interviews, depending on whether you use a B2B solution or a B2C solution. So pains and gains questions, right? Let us say you are in a B2B solution, you're picking up a phone and talking to your customer. You will have to point out, okay, my solution will be happening like this. And, I expect that right now you spend, let's for a moment throw in some assumptions. I expect you spend 3 months in doing this particular activity. My solution will actually reduce, my solution will start working from day 1. You don't have any implementation overload. And it will reduce your execution time to 1 month. That's a gain. And reduction in pain is, implementation time is 0. Through your interviews and through your questions that you will ask, you will start getting answers to these questions. So a lot of your understanding at this stage is going to be qualitative. Okay, let's go to then what are you doing? Because unless you check this out, your ability to last the difficult journey is going to be questionable. What really drives you? What do you really love doing? And what are you happy doing? You must answer these 2 questions. Again, these are qualitative and it will come from introspection. Without this, believe me, you will have a very miserable time building your company, because it is going to be challenging. Then what are you good at? Look at your experience. What are you trained for? What work experience do you have, which gives you that confidence that you will succeed here? What will be your area of focus? What are you good at? Sales, marketing, development, ops? You must have that clarity, because when you build a team of founders, you should at least be able to cover sales, marketing, and operations. But if you're a tech company, then you must at least cover sales, marketing, and development. So at least 3 of these activities must be covered. So take a skills inventory. Take a feedback and input from your peers, from your mentors. Because very often we have a very wrong idea about our own capabilities. Again, a qualitative research. So market research will fall into 2 categories: qualitative research, quantitative research. So even when you have an idea, you will have to do a lot of research. Okay, then you'll have to start asking this question: will customers pay for this? I mean, I can show you so many startups who had a great idea. They actually had a lot of customer base, but they didn't know how to make money. They just couldn't figure out how to make money. Tabzo is one such example. Tabzo had a very interesting application app, which was that category was becoming very popular a couple of years ago, where you had a single app through which you could log into and launch any app. But Tabzo did not have a revenue model in place. Finally, the company got acqui-hired by Amazon. So what will customers pay for this? How much and how often? Is it a one-time payment, or is it a lifetime value that they will keep buying every year from you, or every month from you, or every 3 months from you? This clarity you should have from day 1. And you will need to test this. When you interview people, when you test it out, you should test. And there are techniques available, both for online and offline surveys. How do you find this out? And you can read up about this on the net. There's a lot of information on the net that will tell you this, teach you this. I want to kind of just bring this out for you. Here's something Narayan Murthy told his teams: in God we trust, everybody else brings data. So don't trust your instinct, your intuition. Please look at data, collect data and look at data. See what the data is telling you, whatever your belief might be. You might be a great programmer, you might be writing really jazzy code, but when it comes to business, it's all about the customer. Your code is worth nothing. I mean, history shows, those of you who haven't lived through the entire Microsoft's evolution, I remember using DOS and earlier versions of Windows. One of the most buggy operating systems. And, but Microsoft support was awesome. I mean, you could go to their online resources and you could actually get a fix so quickly. And there was fantastic amount of documentation available which you could read. As against that, Unix, which was a fantastically stable system, had very poor documentation, which is why Unix never got adopted by the general public. So there are things that matter. Coding is not critical. How your user experience will be is far more critical. People can take buggy software if the user experience is great. So you should have clarity about revenue lines and your business model. You should have clarities about this, your revenue line and your revenue model. And you have to do this even before you start writing a single line of code. So I'm going to stop here and ask for any questions at this stage before I go ahead. Anybody who has questions about why do we need to do this? Why don't we just start building the product? Be happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yep.
So a lot of these questions, to try to answer them, we have to show something, right? Like if you want to find out if the customer would pay for this, like we'll have to build something, maybe a mock-up at least. And like a lot of these questions need to answer them requires building something, and the whole premise is that before building something, we should answer these questions. So how does that work?
So is that Avikalp?
Yes, this is Avikalp.
Okay. So there are stages. It will actually depend on whether you're on B2B or B2C, right? So in B2C, there are a lot of very simple surveys you can set up. We call it A/B testing. You can test for features. You can see, what feature is getting you what response to figure that out. As far as B2B is concerned, it could actually, depending on the nature of business you're building in B2B, you could actually get into face-to-face interviews and have a PPT ready, which actually explains what your product is going to do. You will find traction, especially if you have picked up something that is critical for the customer. Would you still need to build some kind of a mock-up? Sure, you will. It will depend on your situation. So for example, my sense is in most of the cases in B2C, you may want to build something very, very rudimentary just to start testing. And how will you test? You'll try to see, okay, that concept, that idea, how many people are getting attracted, how many clicked on. You actually start tracking the online behavior. What are they clicking on? What did they respond to? What did they read? And the typical structure of the surveys are, you have a value prop and you have a question, and you may have two screens. First screen is just about value prop. Second screen is about the price. Okay, this is available at X price. And depending on whether the customer, for example, if he's not wanting to click on it, and he's going to leave your screen, before he leaves, you can just bring up a box asking before you leave, what didn't you like about our proposition? So just these three simple things will start giving you enough indications whether so for example, if you find that you got this one-pager website which actually talks about the value proposition, but nobody's clicking on finding out. So clearly either it's the wrong market segment, it's the wrong marketing message, or the feature really doesn't have an attraction. So you can start figuring a lot out before you actually spend money in building an MVP. Because when you start, and if you're totally driven by your own belief, chances are you are the only customer. Or there might be a few people like you who are possible customers. So that's the challenge with building on pure belief. You have to, and it's an interactive process, Avikalp. It's not that you will get your MVP before you spend any money, but you will get directional cues. And once you have directional cues, you can start investing in building a really rough and ready MVP, which you then start very carefully exposing to innovators. And you design your campaign in such a fashion that people respond to the novelty, to the newness. Only your messaging is such that you make sure that innovators respond. And they will like the newness or the novelty about your product. So is there a one size fits all strategy? No. But what you certainly need to do is have a very calibrated process in place, which helps you figure out maybe 3 or 4 likely MVP candidates. And that you can do with minimal investment. My next slide actually gets into how do you decide right candidate out of those 3 or 4 possible candidates. So does that answer your question, Avikal?
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else? But I think my point is that please be careful. It is not about you getting an idea someday and saying, you know what, this will be great to build. There are too many failures out there like that. You have to go back to this framework and answer those 4 questions to your best of your capability. Do some research, get on and do some surveys and get a sense. If you get a 60-70% confirmation from doing these things where you get a confirmation, hey, there seems to be traction out there, then start investing in a rough and ready MVP so that you can actually start testing with audiences and figuring out. Okay, so what does your startup really need right at the beginning? So you need to collect the qualitative data about who's the customer, what is the job he's trying to perform, what is the nature of need underlying the job, what is the type of problem he's trying to solve. How will you solve the problem differently by innovating a product, service, business model, revenue model? What will be different? And this will come from your understanding of the underlying problem. What is the nature of innovation you're going to do? Disruptive, sustaining, efficiency. This will also determine how should you look at your metrics and your business goals. What will be the pains and gains your solutions will create for the customer? And will the customer be willing to pay for your solution? These questions must be answered right from the beginning. Collect this qualitative data, quantitative data. How much will he be willing to pay for it? How often? How large is the total market? What will be your addressable market at the beginning? So data matters right from the time you get an idea. And you will have to collect more qualitative data than quantitative data, because you can't collect quantitative data unless you have a really minimal product in place. And you can do this without writing a single line of code. Maybe just do a mock-up and start testing it under the radar quietly. Okay, one of the frameworks that we use in our coaching is this Rogers Technology Adoption Curve. Some of you who have attended our workshops are familiar with this. Anytime you introduce a new product, new technology, this is how your market behaves. Initially, you will have innovators responding to your market. They're really looking for novelty. And this is how your sales is going to grow. It really grows when you actually reach this stage. This is where it starts. This is your majority market. That forms about 68-70% of your market. And so innovators will respond first. They will respond to novelty. What is new in your system? What are you offering which gives them a great experience? Early adopters will look for competitive advantage. And your majority market, which is also known as the conservative market, the pragmatists, depending on whose model you're looking at, will look for benefits. They also look for repeatability, predictability, referenceability. These are cautious guys. They want to know who else is using it. How stable is the solution? Can it be depended upon? Their questions are different. So when you're designing your market research, your questions will depend on who you are trying to survey. Are you trying to survey innovators, early adopters, early majority? Who are you trying to survey? So let's take an example. Let's say you found a new material for shoes, and it has three capabilities. Using these shoes, and these are athletic shoes, sport shoes. Using these shoes, a person gets a great feeling wearing them. The sense of comfort goes up. A new material gives you this absolutely awesome sense of comfort. Look at my words. Who am I pitching it to? Or let's say the same material helps you run 5% faster than your normal time. So gain 5% advantage while wearing these shoes. Who am I talking to? Benefits. Maybe this material also is a better sweat absorbent. Benefits. So my three messages are: first is focused on novelty, second is focused on competitive advantage, third is focused on benefits. So you can tweak your surveys depending on how do you frame your message. I wanted to bring this point out for you, and anybody who buys essentially for one of these three things: the experience, novelty, competitive advantage, or benefits. There is no reason outside these three reasons for anybody to buy anything. Okay, moving on. So your first 100 customers are going to come from these innovators and early adopters. So your whatever data you collect has to be focused on these initial set of customers. Don't try to focus on your big market because they're not going to buy initially. So how do you choose who to research, where to do surveys? This framework is critical for that. Moving on. Okay, so let's say you have figured out the possible opportunity. You have more than one candidate opportunity. So where should you invest your time and energy now? You looked at your ideas, you did your market research, and you figured out there are 3 or 4 possible set of features which you can launch and you will have traction. But you still don't know which one will be better. Which is going to bring in the innovators, the early adopters, and the majority. How do you choose? Which do you choose? It's a big question you're going to face. This is where the whole customer development process comes in. What do you really do? You prepare a prototype MVP and test with selected set of customers, preferably innovators and early adopters. Go deeper, collect sharper customer gains and pains data, introduce test features, iterate, and arrive at the most likely feature set that will get you traction. And this is constantly interactive. You're interacting, you're finding out what is getting traction, you're moving from mock-up to MVPs. You could have multiple mock-ups. But this process will then help you zoom into which is the candidate MVP that you should go with to the market. Another way of showing this is Steve Blank is a very successful entrepreneur, and he's a professor in Stanford University. I don't know whether he still teaches. And he wrote the book on lean startups. And those of you who are familiar with this, what we call customer development is exactly his search and steering phase. This is when you also develop your company and product positioning. We have a recorded workshop webinar on YouTube on competitive positioning. Do go have a look. So collecting quantitative data, qualitative data about likely customer segment and your most competitive feature sets and likely revenue model at this stage becomes critical. And this is when you should actually start figuring out your high-level business strategy also. This is the business strategy framework we use. This was developed by one professor called Dr. Roger Martin. Very successful, very simple. Basically 5 questions to be answered. What's your aspiration and what are your goals? Where to play and where not to play. And more than where to play, what is more important is where not to play. Wherever you've decided to play, how will you win in that arena? Okay, in order to win in that arena, what capabilities will you need to build? And what management systems will you need to support that capability? 5 fundamental questions. The last 2 questions become more about organization building. So my experience is that most people don't think in this logical manner, and they actually fail here, where to play and where not to play. They keep broadening their product segment because customers are telling them, give us this feature, give us that feature. Finally, they have a huge set of features, but very little traction on any set of features. So focus becomes extremely critical for you. What do you need to do? Aspiration and goals. Define your next 3 years revenue and profit goals. I know it's very early and you could be completely wrong. It doesn't matter. You need to have a goal. For example, in the early part of our history, when people went out in their ships to reach new horizons, new countries, they always looked at North Star as their focus. Okay, keep North Star in focus because that will tell us whether we are headed in the right direction. Can you imagine how approximate that would have been? What if it is cloudy? But yet they had a directional guide, because that directional guidance is necessary. These are your North Stars. This will keep you focused in the direction you have to proceed. Next, at this stage, define your key result areas that are fundamental to your sustained growth and value generation at this stage. I know it will be difficult. Go to a mentor, go to a coach, but define your key result area. What are the key result areas given this is your business and given this is your 3-year revenue and profit goal and this is your company identity? Your company identity is going to come from that Ikigai. Given the key result areas, what are the key performance indicators that you will monitor to track whether your key result areas you're headed in the right direction? So for example, you have top line goals. You want to make 1 crore first year, 10 crores second year, 100 crores third year. So clearly 2 things need to be tracked. The revenue, that's a key, that becomes a KPI, and growth rate, revenue growth rate, that becomes a KPI. Because without these 2, you will not be able to figure out whether you're going to hit your targets. What will you measure? Revenue, I'll measure sales. That's my metric. What will you analyze about your sales? That depends on what your KRA is. So these 4 things are separate and we don't understand this difference. We actually keep mixing it all up. Analytics is about trends. How will you build what trends to track? Don't track every single trend, because again, remember what we saw in the first slide, the statutory warning, that overload of information is actually going to be a problem. So focus on what is critical for your business. That is why we constantly tell every entrepreneur, focus on your business goals and start measuring from there. Where to play, where not to play, which idea to chase, what customer segment, what feature set. If you've done your market research in that customer dev and idea to opportunity stage, you would have answers to these questions. You would also have answers to competitive strategy and positioning. What's going to be your competitive strategy and what is going to be your positioning? Because this also drives your metrics. This drives your KRAs, KPIs, metrics, and what analytics you will have in place. So without this thinking, you start measuring everything. You start measuring what the last investor told you. And at the end of 10 investor conversations, you may have 20 metrics that you are tracking. God help you. Do it the other way. Define your business goals, create really clear communication around your business goals, what your KRAs are, what your KPIs are, and use metrics and analytics to show to your audience that you are hitting your business goals, and the business goals and the growth that you're talking of should be interesting for investor to say, hey, something's happening here. I want to invest in this. Okay, moving on. So what are some of the questions that must get answered, right? We'll now start looking specifically at classification of metrics. So how good are you in attracting prospect clients? These are traffic metrics. This is number 1 KPIs. Let's call them attraction KPIs. We'll also see how do you baseline at this stage. What is your next set of metrics? How good are you in engaging users? These are your engagement KPIs. This is really about, like, traffic metrics was about what's your organic traffic, what's your direct traffic, what's your paid traffic, what's your social traffic. Start measuring traffic from that perspective from day one. At customer development stage, it'll give you an idea which feature sets are really drawing customers. For engagement KPIs, figure out conversions. How many people are actually getting attracted and then actually engaging? Actually, they're converting into B2B. They're actually taking your product for trials, or B2C. They're actually experimenting, playing around with your product. Make sure that you're not only looking at how many people use your product. Start taking feedback and try to have meaningful conversations with customers at this stage, so that you learn more about what is the nature of engagement. Is it short? Is it long? Are people really engaged? Are we just innovators who are curious about what you have? The third set of metrics are value KPIs. So for example, are you getting paid subscriptions? How much time are they using your product? What about referrals? Are they giving you referrals? What is the net promoter score? Are they signing up for your newsletter? That means they're liking your content. Your content is valuable for them. How good are you at retaining customers? Your retention KPIs. The churn rate is your best retention KPI. And last, your economic KPIs. Financial metrics. I have, in my entire 6 years or 10 years, 7 years of engaging with SME entrepreneurs and with startups, I don't have a single case where I heard the person say, I have a cash flow management in place. Entrepreneurs just don't look at their cash flow. And that is very surprising. Okay, you also need to start measuring what we call customer acquisition cost, CAC, by life cycle value of that customer. Excuse me. Or if you have repeat business from the customer, then you will also measure what we call customer acquisition and retention costs, CARC, and lifetime value by lifetime value. So this ratio really tells you how much do you spend to acquire a customer vis-a-vis the money he gives you, and what percentage of your money earned goes into retaining and acquiring a customer. Let's look at baselining. What are the baselining for this? So baselining for traffic, you have to aim for 5% to 7% growth per week. It's not going to happen initially. This is your goal. You have to constantly monitor and see if you're growing towards this number. At this number, you're doing really very good. And this number will attract any kind of funding. What about engagement KPIs? You need to have at least 30% users per month using the app or your website. 10% users must come and use every day. And 1% concurrent users per day. If these three things are happening, these are really very strong signals for an investor. What about value KPIs? So 90% customers should opt for your premium plan. And this is not going to happen on day one. Really, the reason why companies have freemium, economy, and premium plan is basically freemium pull them in, economy get them to pay. What you really want them to do is sign up your premium plans. So if you find that a very large percent, that the number of customers who are actually signing up for your premium plan is growing, clearly you're creating value. Your customer gain to pain ratio should be greater than 10. If you can put value to gains and pains, then it should be greater than 10. Verified by customer. This comes out of customer surveys. Your net promoter score should be more than 90%, which means people are happy referring you to their connects. And 25% of your business at least should be greater than 25% should be coming through referrals. This number, the higher the better. What about churn? You have to target, it's not going to be less than 5% a month, it's going to be higher. But this is your goal. How do you bring your churn down to below 5% a month? Long-term goal, less than 2%. At less than 2%, you're ready to scale. At less than 5%, you have a viable business. What about economic metrics? Baseline. You should have cash flows thought through for next 6 to 12 months runway. That is, you have enough cash and enough operations and management control in place to have a runway for at least 6 to 12 months, depending on at what stage of business you are in. Your customer acquisition cost should be less than 1/3 of your lifetime value of the customer. And you have to measure this. What did it cost to acquire a customer? What is the lifetime value? And that ratio, if it is less than 1/3, it will attract investment. Our guidance to our startups who we coach, we create strategies and plans for them where their operating profitability is achieved within 3 to 6 months. I don't know whether Veristic Alliance is not, Shamal is not on the call, right? Shamal is running a startup where we kind of brought him to operational profitability within 3 months, because without that, you don't have a business. And once you have that, your worries about running your business are gone. Now you're going to look for growth funds. You tell your investor, hey, I don't need money to run my business. That is running and generating cash for itself. I need money to grow, which is the risk capital I've come to you for. Okay, moving on. Whatever metrics we've told you about, the business framework that it should be put into is what we call the 4 perspectives metrics framework. In each of these perspectives, we answer a certain set of questions, and I'm only going to give you sample examples, questions. Finance. How do we monetize value created for customers? Our goal, achieve economic sustainability. Day one, you have to start asking this question from yourself. Customers, what value do we create for customers? I know most Indian entrepreneurs struggle with this, but you will have to quantify this. Start qualitative and then go to quantifying it. What do our customers really need? How do customers perceive the value that we create? There's no point you're saying, hey, I create great value. How does the customer perceive it? So what value do I create? What does he need? Does my value creation match with his need? How does he perceive what I create? Does he consider it invaluable, priceless, or he says, okay, good to have? Zero startups focus on this. Zero. Which is your internal systems and processes. I have seen, I think in my experience, I've only seen 3 or 4 startups who got into deep coaching with us, who actually had a systems and process focus, who were building systems and processes from day one. So questions like these become important. How do we create value for customers? How do we attract, engage, and get feedback from customers? What business processes do we need to create value? How do we retain customers? These questions have to be answered from day one and have to be measured. You have to have metrics for this in place. People and growth. I mean, we have to literally push startup entrepreneurs to start thinking about this. That what are the skills and capabilities you'll need in the next 6 to 12 months? Usually, most entrepreneurs are reactive. But you will have to start thinking about this. What are the milestones when we'll carry out this development activity? So please use this framework. There is enough on online about balanced scorecard or Kero that you can use, and this will create a structure for aligning your metrics with your business goals. Very important to do. Moving on. Okay, so you moved from idea to opportunity to customer development, right? Now, innovators are excited about novelty element in your product. So have you figured out which customer inputs are relevant for your product roadmap? Because you need to start defining your product roadmap at this stage. Having a viable MVP in place, critical. So I'm just summarizing whatever we've discussed so far. Created a feature set to acquire innovators and early adopter customers. Collect what are customers looking for, and please select highest common factor and not least common multiple to build MVP. Very critical. Most entrepreneurs will build LCM, and that is why they have a wide spread of features and very low attention on the marketplace, because bandwidth doesn't exist. What is the state, emotional state at this stage? It's empathy. You have found a reachable market of innovators and or early adopters who are trying to perform a job that is an unworkable, unavoidable, urgent problem with a latent critical need to be addressed, and you are solving the problem in a manner no one else has done so far. If this is happening, you will have empathy of your customer. Very critical. And if they are empathizing with you, they will live with your shortcomings, provided you are responsive. So these are the things you will check for. So the question for you, what KPIs, metrics, analytics for finance, customer, internal, and people should you measure at this stage to establish empathy? Just attraction KPIs. Just track attraction KPIs at this stage. You don't have to go to engagement. You don't have to go to other stuff. Keep tracking your traffic. So you succeeded in customer dev, you got reasonable traction. What about next stage, which is your product go-to-market fit stage, which is here? So have you figured out your product roadmap to gain more early adopters and start acquiring conservative buyers, the pragmatists, the majority market? So are 3 elements in place, which is, do you have the right product? Is the revenue price clear to you? Have you identified the market? Is there a fit between all these 3? If there is, you would create what we call stickiness. So you hear these terms, empathy, stickiness, virality. We want you to understand what has to happen at which stage. In order for you to succeed in product go-to-market fit, stickiness must be achieved. What does it mean? You're finding more and more early adopters who are using your product more often. You have set some amount of internal processes in place, especially customer experience and relationship management. In place to reduce the churn. And you have also started acquiring conservative customers. The next, remember Rogers technology curve, adoption curve? So you're moving on to the next set of customers. This should be happening, and you should be measuring this. Again, what KPIs and metrics and analytics will you do under finance, customer, internal, and people at this stage to establish stickiness? 3 things: attraction KPIs, engagement KPIs, and retention KPIs. So just to summarize, see, I'm trying to give you a structure. What will you measure at which stage? How do you align it with your business goals? What is it that you're actually looking at this stage? So that you don't blindly just start tracking numbers. Okay, you established product market fit, right? Now you're actually in the business model discovery stage. So you are growing sticky customers who have started using the product. you have hopefully figured out your revenue model, and you've figured out systems and processes to deliver it. So are all three elements in place now? Your value proposition, your revenue model, and your systems and processes. If these are in place, your business is viable. Start building on building predictability, repeatability in your business model. So ensure your systems and processes are working most efficiently. You'll have to measure this. But see how the focus changes. I am coming from business management perspective. So parameter that I need to start tracking is, are my systems and processes working most efficiently? Is the revenue model generating sales and profit as I had projected in aspirations? So tying metrics back to your business goals becomes very critical. Are you achieving virality? So empathy, stickiness, virality. So you'll keep keep hearing these questions from people. Is your product viral? Are you getting virality? And you need to be very clear you can't look for virality when you're just trying to figure out, do you have the right MVP? At that moment, only traffic KPIs matter. At product go-to-market fit, stickiness matters. So if you already achieved stickiness, yeah, you'll measure it, but it is no longer your most critical factor. You'll keep an eye on it, whether the stickiness is staying at the parameters that you had decided for yourself. Next is virality. Is your product viral? What does it mean? You're finding more and more conservative customers who are becoming your referral engine. You have a robust internal process, especially service delivery, customer experience, and relationship management in place to reduce the churn below 2%. This is how metrics are getting linked back to your business stage, about the emotional state of the business. Again, what KPIs, metrics, and analytics will you measure for all the 4 stages to establish stickiness? Actually, all 5, because now you're becoming a regular business. So attraction KPIs, engagement KPIs, value KPIs, retention KPIs, and economic KPIs. This is when you are doing full-fledged metrics tracking, and you're linking it back to your KRA KPIs. Okay, I'm again going to stop here, because after this, we're going to switch to how do you track sales and marketing. My intent so far was to give you, in the early stages where you have an idea till this time you discover a business model, why do you measure whatever you're measuring? How do you link it back to your business goals? Is there a structure in which you can plug these numbers into, this data into, which gives you alignment between your business goals, the state of your business, and what investors want to actually look for in your business? I'll take questions at this stage, if any.
Sir, Saurav has a question on chat.
Sure, I'll have a look. Chat. Okay, chat has multiple questions actually. Saurav, hopefully Herbert Simon won the Nobel Prize for his work in decision making. Yes, he did, Gagan. May I know this model name? Sharad, I don't know what you're talking about. Which model? Okay, jobs to be done. This is a great point. I have had this question from an investor on what is the viral component in the product when we were discussing the MVP stage. He's out of his mind. It will not be viral at MVP stage. Very premature. And you should tell him, okay, look, right now I can talk about attraction and engagement KPIs. It can't be viral at MVP stage. I still haven't established product market fit. The moment you talk like that, he will know that you know your business. So here's the funny thing. How can a product become viral at MVP stage? It is not even complete. You can tell him, I mean, to your point, it's a forward plan. Say, yeah, I intend to make my product viral by doing this, and this. We have a clear plan in place, and that actually has come out from customer dev research stage. You know what feature sets you are going to launch. Your product roadmap is clear. So at MVP stage, if somebody is asking about virality, get into a product roadmap discussion and how your product roadmap will actually create virality. Okay, I don't think there's any other questions. So let's get back to the presentation. There is. Avikalp, we are recording this, so you can go online and have a look.
Thank you. See you again. Bye-bye.
You're absolutely right, Saurav. You learn, but so I think, Saurav, the answer needs to change slightly. What you need to say is, hey, listen, I am figuring out what features are getting what traction and what people like and what is worthwhile developing right now. I have it in my roadmap. When I reach the business model stage, I would have built virality into my proposition. So link it to business model discovery stage. It's only going to happen after you establish your product go-to-market fit. So here's the thing about frameworks. I just want to make this point to you guys that the fact that there is a 5-stage journey framework, which we call 5 chasms, and it pretty much links specific activities and outcomes to a specific stage. Your focus becomes razor sharp. Otherwise, what will happen, Saurav, he told you virality. Now you are struggling. How do you build virality into your MVP? You start investing in digital marketing, and here's the thing, what you're trying to do. You're trying to move a product which is not ready from innovators and maybe some early adopters to early adopters and conservatives. Not happening. The product is not ready for your majority market. So virality will not happen. So once you think about it like this, it becomes obvious. Okay, continuing. Okay, moving on. So the question I have for all of you, are sales and marketing really different? I have found, people hire as, we are looking for business development executives, and then they actually put them in sales. The two are not same. Or they advertise for sales and marketing executives. The two activities are not same. These are two different activities. And if you don't have clarity as the entrepreneur about this, you are going to make mistakes. So let's spend some time understanding some of this. Sales is equal to marketing? No. Sales is equal to price? No. What is sales and marketing black box? What all do you really do here? You get new leads. You get orders. You solve customer issues. You build and nurture relationships. You understand the market and competition and trends. You follow up on delivery. Notice now the circling is no longer red. You manage your stocks, whether you are delivering, not do you have stocks to deliver. I'm giving you specific examples, but for people who have virtual product, stock delivery may not be stock, it may not be issue, but product stability may be an issue. Follow up on collections. Take reorders from existing customers. So all this falls into this box called sales and marketing. But guess what? A lot of these things will actually separate out. Generating demand and fulfilling demand. These are two activities that you do. So generating demand gets you potential customers, and fulfilling demand creates new customers. And fulfilling demand creates new customers and mines old customers. These are two separate activities. Generating demand is marketing, and converting demand into orders is sales. Now imagine if you use a salesperson to actually generate demand. You are putting a person to a wrong use. That is not his skill. His skill is closure. Or if you're putting a marketing person to close, closing is not his skill. But creating marketing messages, making a person align with what your product is. That's his job. Again, you're trying to push him into a role that he's not happy doing, he's not capable of doing. So please, in your mind, separate those two activities. These are different. So let's understand the sales and marketing cycles here. What does it mean to generate inquiries and manage inquiries? So inquiry generation is marketing and business development work. Inquiry management is the next thing that you got inquiries, you got to manage them. Somebody needs to put them into database. Somebody needs to monitor what is the state, where is the inquiry. Then somebody needs to convert. Please notice the difference in colors. Boxes now become white. After you convert, somebody needs to make sure the order was fulfilled. And if there's an issue in orders, somebody needs to be there to provide after sales service. And then do collections, get the customer to pay. And then somebody needs to do remarketing to a customer if he's happy and get further orders. And then again, fulfill orders. This is marketing. The red box on your left-hand side is marketing. And the box on your right-hand side is sales. But that too, customer relationship management is outside this. Typically, I've seen companies pushing a salesperson into all these activities. Whereas what he should really be doing is just inquiry conversion. Your order fulfillment, after sales service, collection, customer relationship management, have a separate person. What's the point of using a salesperson who's supposed to get you orders in fulfilling orders, chasing collections? Biggest mistake. You can hire a girl or a boy for 15,000 bucks who can then actually do just this: order fulfillment, after sales service, and collections. And your marketing team can actually do remarketing, which is what they do in any case. And you have a person who actually manages customer relationship for you. How do you generate inquiries? Fundamentally, there are these 6 methods. And you have to measure each of these separately, so that you know which of these methods are really working for you. Direct marketing, advertising, public relations, social media, events, market research. What is working for you? Let's get into concept of marketing funnel. How do marketing funnels work? So these 6 activities actually help you create what we call category awareness. What is your business about? When we actually, in our competitive positioning webinar, we talk about 2 positioning: your company positioning and your product positioning. Most entrepreneurs confuse it. They don't separate the two. The two are separate. Company positioning helps you align customer with your company. They buy your product because they believe in it, believe in your organization, believe in its values. So for example, if you used an iPhone, the possibility that you will pick up the Apple Watch or an Apple TV increases significantly, because of not the product, but because of you have aligned with the values the company offers, the purpose for which the company works. And very often, people may not be aware about what your business is about. For example, in our case, people confuse us with mentors, with motivational trainers, with advisors. We are neither. We are coaches. We work with you like a cricket coach works with a cricket player. We watch you, we observe you, we give you guidance, we create strategies for different matches for you. We tell you, okay, how will you operate on the ground with this specific strategy? What happens if this bowler comes in? How will you actually face this bowler? That's the level of detailing a coach does. So unless we clarify this in our promotion campaign, that a coach is different from an advisor, mentor, motivational trainer, personal coaching, very different. So it will be very difficult for my customer to understand what business am I in. Next, brand awareness, making the person aware about what your company stands for. So company purpose becomes critical here. Then comes product and service awareness. What is your value proposition? So all these activities that you do must actually work on these three things. Category awareness if it's needed, because somewhere it might be, for example, after Amazon started selling books, Flipkart didn't have to tell most aware users that what are they doing. They understood, they sell books online. So most of the work had to be done on product and brand. This is how you generate inquiries. And you could use any one of the above 6 methods to do it. And you need to have separate campaigns for brand awareness and for product. And if necessary in your business, for category. Once you've done that, then you got inquiries, then you need to engage with that customer. To start engaging him with your product, with your company, he starts understanding what your product is about, what your company is about. And you generate interest as a consequence. This is where the customer is getting serious and he's becoming a prospect. So you're nurturing an inquiry. And finally, you establish intent, converting an inquiry into a sales lead. The customer says, hey, yes, I was interested, but I now want to actually commit myself to your product. And it will vary from different, B2C it will be different, B2B2B it will be different, B2B it will be different. But this is the general principle. This is your marketing pipeline. Look at it as a separate pipeline, and you need to have metrics for each stage so that you know what is happening with a specific campaign. How did a campaign perform? How did your engage activity perform? You'll have to have scripts for each of these stages. A good sales team would have scripts, a marketing team would have scripts for each of these stages, so that even if you pick up somebody fresh, within 1 week, he goes through your script training, role play sessions, and he's ready. No startup structures its sales training or marketing training in this manner according to the funnel. Let's look at the sales funnel. So now you have leads, right? You established intent, you have now leads, qualified, we call them sales qualified leads. You establish purchase intent now. You get, from leads, you get sales qualified leads. Sales spoke to these customers and yes, they established intent and they became sales qualified leads. You evaluate various options that they have with them. And this could be automated, this could be on the phone, this could be across a table, depends on your nature of business. Now you have prospects. These are potential buyers. So see the difference. You start, most startups, most companies will start calling leads prospects. Leads are not prospects. There's a lot of work you need to do before they become prospects. A prospect will ask for a quote or a proposal, which is when they become potential customer, and see how the numbers keep dropping because the pipeline is getting narrower and narrower. And finally, they move to purchase and place an order. So they become customers. And if you have a customer management process in place, you're nurturing these customers, you can do remarketing, get repeat orders, cross-sell, upsell. Very few companies I've seen make investment in nurturing. And those of you who use services of companies like GoDaddy or WordPress or Wix, you see the amazing amount of automated interaction those companies do with you to get you to buy more. It is not some person pressing buttons or making calls. It is simply automated processes that technology runs, but they've spent time on figuring out the process. So question is, do you have tested script for each of these stages? Because if you don't, you will have a very lossy funnel. So every stage has to have a script and you test that script. You constantly test. How do you test? You track conversions. So let's see, how do you track your sales performance? What will be your metrics for sales performance? Let's say marketing gave you 1,000 leads and you qualify 1 out of every 3 leads. So you are left with 333 leads, SQLs. And there also, let's say 1 out of 4 SQLs actually becomes a prospect who's considering your service. So you have 83 prospects. And you quote to them, 1 out of every 5 actually starts giving serious consideration to your proposal. So you have 16 potential customers. And let's say you manage to convince only 1 out of every 4 potential customers to buy. So you have 4 customers. You started with 1,000 leads. You ended up with 4 customers. So your overall conversion is 1:25. So for every 25 leads marketing gave you, you get 1 customer. Sorry, 1 out of 250, not 25, 250. Let me correct this. One out of 25 would be very good. And you start remarketing, repeat orders, etc. to these customers. This is how you start tracking your sales performance. The next question is, how do you optimize this? Now we know you started with 1,000 leads. You got 333 SQLs, you got 83 prospects, you got 16 potential customers, you got 4 customers. But what if your business requires to go from 4 customers to 20 customers? Now the question for you all, and you should start responding on chat, how will you improve your sales funnel? What will you do to go from 4 customers to, let's say, 10 customers with the same, with whatever funnel you see in front of you? I'm going to pause here and wait for your answers on chat. Anybody, guys? Come on. There are no right or wrong answers. Customer references, testimonials, publishing, improve marketing, increase lead quality, work on bottoms up. Okay. Suresh, can you come online and explain to it, what does it mean, work on bottom up? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hello.
Yep. Suresh, what do you do?
I'm into real estate marketing.
Okay.
We sell apartments, villas, and plotted development in Bangalore.
Okay.
Of the major developers and builders in Bangalore. We have a strategic tie-up with them.
Yeah. Have you attended any one of our workshops earlier?
We did attend it. The answer might influence from your only, sir.
I thought so.
Yeah, we did had a debate on that, so I could not forget that. That's a very critical point that you have solved.
So Suresh, why don't you explain it to the rest of us?
All right, sure, sir. In this scenario, keeping the the universe of 1,000 leads in mind, right now, working from top to bottom would take a large amount of resources, energy, time, and probably the result might not be this thing. So the best way to increase or double or triple or sales, the number of sales to increase, the best way is that you work from the stage of once your lead gets converted to prospect. The more number of prospects that you have and the more you work on that small universe of numbers, we can have better conversion ratios. Hello?
Yeah, we're listening.
So let me just, I'm just trying to get to the slide. Just a minute.
Yeah. So let me help you here, Suresh. I'm going to jump in here. So guys, the thing is, you already have scripts. The point is that those scripts were tested for a certain situation. What you have to do is start from bottom up. Go to purchase stage. You had 16 potential customers. Look at your script and look at why did 12 people not buy? What was going wrong in your script? And start working on the script for purchase stage. So that from 16 potential customers, you actually double and you get 8 customers. Because something is happening at that stage which is causing 12 people to walk away. So keep working up the funnel, looking at your scripts, looking at you should have recorded your sales transactions. You should have figured out, what was told to the customer. Why did the potential customer walk away? If you're tracking that data, tracking that information, you would then know what to fix and keep going up the funnel step by step. Because increasing 1,000 leads increases your marketing budget. And now it also increases the manpower required to convert 1,000 leads to SQLs. But if you do it the reverse way, you don't have to increase manpower anywhere. You don't have to increase your marketing budget. You simply bring in more efficiency into each stage of your funnel. So, Suresh, did you apply this in your business, and how did it help you?
Yeah, I happened to apply this during this pandemic because getting a new lead at this point in time is quite quite difficult and very competitive. So, in that scenario, and it also requires a huge amount of budget for marketing. So, whatever the existing universe of data which I had, which I have been prospecting for the last the last quarter, the first quarter of the year. Right now, I started working on this data, and then I could, try to work it out what exactly the client issue at that point in time, and they could not make a decision. So some of them were very keen now because the prices of the real estate and other properties have been dropped down right now. So they had an interest and they were in a search of looking for. So I could address their need at this point in time, and we started closing a few deals, and few deals in this scenario in this time is quite a big thing. So we have been surviving on that. So it is working out for me.
Very good.
Yeah.
So guys, this is how you. Thank you, Suresh. This is how you optimize your funnel.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Any other questions? So Sriram, customer reference, testimonial, publishing, this is important. Improving marketing, Ganesh? No, that will be my last choice, because everything will, you improve marketing, generate more leads. But if your sales funnel efficiency is low, you want to spend more money on people and marketing. So first figure out what can you squeeze out of your existing pipe in terms of efficiency at each conversion stage. Once you've optimized that, then you increase your marketing budget. And figure out costs at each stage. What is it? Remember that CAC by LTV. Cost of acquiring customer on lifetime value of customer. If that number is not less than 33%, you have a problem on your hand. So CAC/LTV becomes, or CARC/LCV becomes very important. Any more questions? Okay, no questions. Moving on. Yeah, very quickly. So can you increase the customer lifecycle value? How do you increase the customer lifecycle value? So he's giving you a certain revenue. So use influencer marketing, referrals. Get your customers to influence other people. First of all, spend on retention. Invest on retention. And get them to give you references so that or use them as references in your sales follow-up stage. So that those references actually help sell more. Or keep selling more to the customer, upsell, cross-sell, start looking at those options. So how do you actually convert life cycle value to lifetime value? So even if that customer is not going to buy himself, but if he can give you support in other sales as a reference, he's still increasing the value. So that was the last slide. This brings me to the end of the presentation. If there are any questions on any part that we covered, be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Ravi. It has been really a great session for me. Can I get your details? How can I reach you out personally?
Yeah, sure. Sudip will be actually getting in touch with you.
Okay.
Sudip, you need to come on here. Who was that, by the way?
Yeah, I think you can introduce your name.
Yeah, Sudip, this is Sharad here, Sharad Pandey.
Yeah, hi, Sharad.
I'm based out of Melbourne, Australia. And yeah, so all good. I just wanted details of Ravi. so that I can reach out personally to him or probably to you.
Sure, Sharad, just link with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, all good, all good. Thank you so much. Yep.
You're welcome. Sudip, over to you. You can take a round of inputs. Let me make you the host.
There's a question.
Okay. One of the slides that we are asked is to present metric slide during the pitch presentation. What would be a good set of numbers for? So, Saurav, go back to the stage. If you have moved on to product go to market fit, then you are really looking at stickiness. So you're looking at traffic and engagement KPIs. So you could separately go back to the recording and see what we said about traffic and engagement KPIs at what stage and how we linked those back to finance, customer, internal processes and people. Sriram has a question about what do we do in cross-sell and upsell. So Sriram, if somebody has bought your, let's say, economy version of product, upsell would be selling him the premium version. I've just been, our hosting is on GoDaddy, and it's amazing the number of mails they keep sending me about, how I can take additional offerings. I can invest in next year and they give me 30% discount. And this is all automated. They are constantly upselling or cross-selling to me. If I don't have email services, they're constantly sending me mails on how I could move this email to their platform. It's fantastic. I mean, and the beauty is there are enough platforms available out there where you can automate this stuff. You don't have to put a person to do this. Cross-sell is when you sell other products. I have taken hosting services from GoDaddy, they sell me email. If I've taken email, they sell me website creation capabilities. Answers your question, Sriram? Great. Anybody else?
Okay, thank you, Ravi. I think if we can go through a quick round of key takeaways from today's workshop, that'll be nice. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, Neeraj this side.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, Ravi sir. It was a really nice session. I think it's the third for me. So the key takeaways are around KPIs, the 5 different KPIs which you mentioned, and along with that, the sales funnel concept I heard this for first time today. It's quite interesting, and I'm going to implement with the work I'm doing. Thanks a lot. Big fan.
You're welcome, Neeraj.
Thanks, Neeraj. Who next? Like a classroom, you have to call out names. Yeah, Ganesh, you came unmute.
Hi, this is Ganesh here. So today I got a good understanding of regarding matrices and also about marketing and sales funnel. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganesh. Anand, Chandrasekhar, Gagan, Joel. Yeah, go ahead, Anand, you're on.
Hello. Hello. Hi, Ravi sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Gagan, go ahead.
Hi. So, Ravi sir, I've attended a couple of your sessions over here, and by far, I think this really helped me a lot. Is there by any chance that you could take up a session on how we could use analytics specifically in a startup?
Okay.
Just analytics, not
sure.
just, yeah, if that would be great, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Anand here.
Go ahead, Anand.
Yeah. Sir, actually, the key takeaways are today I have learned many things here, and mainly the key performance indicator KPIs. The 5 KPIs are that I like. More than that, while started listening about your words, you told no that. You will be work whatever the startup is, you will be there to support, like a mentor, a coach, the thing, like you will be like a part of our team, like that thing I liked very much, sir. So there are many things every slide, there I learned so much of things. That's what the key takeaways for me, sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Saurav.
Yes, hi, Ravi sir, and thank you again. Very good session. For me, the key takeaway was that the metrics at each stage, and instead of looking at everything what your investor or someone else might be telling you to look at, you have to focus on which stage of your journey you are in, and then cut the noise out, and then focus on achieving the next milestone across those different stages. So I think that is valuable. It helps save a lot of time and maintain the focus on what you're actually doing, and lead your team through it. I think that is one of the key things for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Saurav.
Hello, Ravi sir. This is Srinivas here. So, I am actually taking care of pre-sales, and I work with actually sales team for the positioning B2B data analytics and IoT products platforms. So today I got first time that the sales funnel and how to optimize that funnel and with bottom up. That is a completely new concept. First time I'm hearing. So Suresh also explained that in real estate how it helped. So can you bit elaborate on that point? If how I can optimize the leads at the PO stage, like the bottom up stage, with the bottom up approach in a B2B segment.
Srinit, it will really depend on your business. We'll have to deep dive into your business. What do you do? And probably this is a one-on-one conversation. You can reach out to Sudhir separately, and we can see how to help you.
Thank you, sir. But today's session at least gave me a thought to think in that direction.
Great. Good to hear that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Srini. Okay. I think anybody else wants to share the takeaways? Okay. Okay. The others are the backbenchers of the class.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Sriram here.
Yes, Sriram.
Yeah, it was a very nice session. Actually, I'm a training and research and product development company in Bangalore. So I'm studying for almost 5 to 6 months related to how to pitch into the market. This is very unique actually, and I have all the data to go ahead. The point here is I just need some inputs related to is there any way, like in a shorter period, we can pitch the sales, not sales, marketing basically.
So, if you want to answer that.
What is that question? Short-term pitch for marketing.
I have mentioned in the chat actually.
The effective promotional techniques in early adopter stage in shorter time periods, say 2 to 3 months. Sure, Sriram, I think we can take it offline. I can get in touch with you and we can have a quick chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sriram, can you leave your contact number and email ID? We don't see in the registration list.
Sure.
Please drop a message with your contact number and email ID.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sriram. Okay, we give 20 seconds for the backbenchers to come up front. Suresh, Rekha, Joel, Ganesh has spoken. All right. I think we are done. Thank you very much, Ravi, for your time. As always, very insightful.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Hi, Suresh.
Hey. Hi. Hello. All right. The key differentiator this time also was that the last few slides right now, which just was a differentiating between the marketing and the sales. Quite often, we being in sales tend to collaborate this or not collaborate, it get mixed up. The sales and marketing always get mixed up, and we always take that in as an entrepreneur. We consider the marketing function also like a sales function, and we tend our people to do both the things. So probably that is the area where I believe that the productivity or efficiency is not to the maximum we take out of that the guy, and probably it also result in attrition because it's been burdened with multiple KPIs. So I believe the differentiator continue, a salesperson has to do his job. So by doing so, he becomes productive, efficient, and the turnover also increases, in fact, right now. So I believe that was a very key takeaway, along with the matrix system what already in place. We being a marketing company, so the last few 4, 5, 6 slides was pretty much very critical or very important. It mattered, in fact, right now. So during the lead generation phase and various methodology of generating lead, and we tend to the sales people taking the entire A to Z part of it, in fact, right now. So that's a differentiator which I which I got it after the Visa's class. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Suresh.
Yeah.
So I've already thanked Ravi. Once again, thank you. Just a request to everybody, you'll get a message right after this workshop, and we will request for a feedback on whatever you have experienced in this workshop. We'll request you to go ahead and submit those feedback so that we can continue to enhance the quality of delivery that we are trying to commit to all of you.
Yeah, fine. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So let's close today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
This is JCL Jewelry. This is one of the brands.
Sorry, Rekha was saying something.
I think by mistake she's gone. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.